Well, I hope during this last week you had some time to reflect on the events of Holy Week, for the struggles and difficulties that Jesus went through. It's really easy to come on Palm Sunday and then come at Easter and miss all of the cost of it. So I hope you were able in some way to reflect on that and be in touch with that this week. If not, you may want to go back and read that story. So in the Gospel of Mark, the story begins with waiting. It begins with waiting. The women want to anoint Jesus' body, but by doing that, that would be them doing work, and work was not allowed on the Sabbath, and so they had to wait until the Sabbath was over. You ever had to wait for anything? What are the things you have to wait for? What things do you wait for in your life?
Test results. Test results.
Payday. What's that, Jermaine?
Test results.
Test results. Birthdays. Birth of a baby. Does that sound familiar back there? Vacations. There you go. So waiting can be positive stuff, but it can be difficult stuff as well. You know, I know many of you, though you didn't mention it, you wait for the weekend, right? It's a little different for me, but I get the idea. You know, Alice mine, we think of her, and she waits for results from the doctor. You know, has the cancer spread? What will that mean? What are the things she needs to deal with in that? Others are in that same position. And I'm sure Linda's waiting for the start of Mad Men, right? Yeah, starts tonight, by the way. AMC. So, it begins with waiting, something more familiar. The women had to wait, but they were ready. As soon as day broke, they were on their way to that tomb. They were on their way there. But when they got there, they found something happened. Something happened. We can all identify with that. We've waited for something, we go somewhere, and then something happens. You know, we go to Disneyland and we get all excited and then it rains. You know? Something happens, and that's where these women found themselves. Something happened. They found a stone rolled away. In fact, as they were walking, they talked about who was going to do that for them. It was big, it was heavy. But they got there and the stone's already rolled back. Something had happened. And there was a young man who greeted them from inside the tomb. He said those words, those biblical words we've heard over and over again. Fear not. Fear not. The last time we heard that was on Christmas, when Mary was told, fear not. Now, those words, fear not, don't really mean don't be afraid. Well, they kind of do, but there's more to it. It's really the Bible's way of saying, heads up. Keep your eyes open. Something's happening. God is involved here. Look past what you might see. The stranger then gave them Jesus' forwarding address. Said, Jesus is not here. He went to Galilee. Go tell the disciples, and especially Peter, go back to Galilee. Now, if you remember in the Gospel of Mark, Galilee is where it all begins. That's where Jesus comes to his disciples and says to them, follow me. So now, with the resurrected Christ, there's a new call to follow him. And you know what they did, right? They ran away in fear, and they didn't tell anybody. Isn't that often our reaction? If God wants us to do something, it's scary stuff. And oftentimes we'll run in the opposite direction and tell no one. Because there's more to the story. There's more to the story. Mark's gospel ends abruptly. They fled because they were afraid and they didn't tell anyone. Mark is saying to us, there's more to the story. There's more to the story. For those women who've not yet seen the risen Christ, and for us. And it may not be easy. may not be easy. There's more to learn. There's more to experience. There's more to see. My good friend and pastor Colin Carpenter shared a personal reflection on Facebook yesterday. He wrote these words: I presided over our Good Friday vigil. It gave me time to reflect on the holy presence in my life. My big takeaway from my experience is that the Spirit is firmly in control of my life, whether I like it or not. He went on to say, one of my biggest character flaws is that I tend to live out of fear. I've let fear rule me in so many ways. Fear of my own mortality, the fear of confrontation with those I disagree with, the fear of economic uncertainty for myself and my family, just to name a few. It was reconfirmed to me Friday that I don't have to live in fear. Jesus has taught me that that is the reason he came into the world, to dispel the fears of our lives, so that we might live firmly in love and in grace. So that's why he came. But the question is, where do we go from here? What's next? When we have those questions with God, there's often a bit of confusion. Al Smith was governor of New York State for a time. During his first term early on, he went to visit Sing Sing prison and get the whole tour of the place. Before the tour was over, the warden said to him, "Would you address the inmates?" Well, he was a bit surprised by that, but he's a politician, he'll talk to anybody, and so he said, "Sure." And so as they gathered together and he was to address them, he said to them, "My fellow citizens." And he thought, well, I'm not sure they have all of the rights of citizenship. And so he started over and he said, "My fellow convicts." And everyone laughed, and he knew that wasn't right. But not one to give up easily, he continued and he said, "Well, anyhow, I'm glad to see all of you here today." We can be confused easily, but often it's not the confusion that gets us. It's simply that we want our own way. We need our own way. We demand our own way. A senior naval officer had always dreamed of commanding a battleship. Late in his career, his dream came true. One stormy night, the captain walked on the bridge. He noted a light off the port bow that was closing rapidly. He immediately ordered the signalman to flash the message to the unidentified craft: "Alter your course 10 degrees north." Quickly, the response came, "Alter your course 10 degrees south." Well, annoyed at the thought of being asked to give way to a smaller vessel, he snapped out the order to be sent back: "Alter course 10 degrees. I am a captain." The reply came back: "Alter your course. I'm a third-class petty officer." Now infuriated, the captain grabbed the signal light for himself and he fired off, "Alter your course. I am a battleship." The reply came back: "Alter your course. I am a lighthouse." The journey to the risen Christ is not always an easy one. And we can get so close sometimes only to miss it. That's the story we have today. The women got so close, but they missed it and they ran off in fear. Jim Moore tells about his story, about an experience he had in the Garden Tomb in Jerusalem. He said, "I was there with the Holy Land tour group. We came one morning to the Garden Tomb, the place where the resurrection happened. Said, I can't find the words to express the thrill of that experience, the exhilaration of being in that sacred place. We walked around that beautiful garden. We went inside the empty tomb. We touched the massive stone that had been rolled away from the door of the grave. We stood together in that holy place and celebrated Holy Communion. We prayed for our loved ones, and we sang the hymn, 'Christ the Lord is risen today.' It was an incredible moment, a powerful spiritual moment for me," he said. And then he noticed a man who was sitting on a bench nearby. He'd been watching them. He went over and sat beside the man. The man said to him, "I just love this place. It's so serene and quiet here. I come here 2 or 3 times a week to enjoy this. Impressed, Jim said to him, "You must be a really devoted Christian." And I said, "Oh, not really. I'm not a Christian at all. I just come here because it's pretty." We get so close sometimes. The women were so close, but they didn't find what they were looking for. The story of the Little Prince, there's an exchange between the author and the Little Prince. Little Prince says, "The men where you live raise 5,000 roses in a single garden, and they do not find what they're looking for?" "They do not find it," I replied. "And yet what they're looking for could be found in one single rose or in a little water?" "Yes, that's true," I said. And the Little Prince noted, "The eyes are blind. One must look with the heart." One must look with the heart. There's one more thing, and that is that each one must find the risen Christ for themselves. You can't find it for someone else. Someone else can't find it for you. It's a colony of water bugs who wondered where all of their friends went when they climbed up the water lily stalks and disappeared. It happened over and over again. They wondered about what was out there. What was that great mystery beyond? And so the leader of the water bugs got them all together, and he made them all promise that the next one out would come back and tell them about that great mystery beyond. Well, as luck would have it, the leader was the next one to climb that water stalk. He struggled for all he was worth, breaking through the water to the surface. He fell back, just exhausted on a lily pad. When he awakened, he discovered that he had been transformed. He had a new body. He was a dragonfly. So he flapped his wings and he soared off into the air. Amazing. Free. But then he remembered his promise. And so as he tried to dive into the water, he simply bounced off the surface. And then he realized that the colony probably wouldn't recognize him in his new form anyway. They would have to discover it for themselves. And so today, like the women, we return to the tomb over and over again. We come with new questions, find new hope, new direction. The school teacher was assigned to visit children in a large hospital. She received a routine call to go and visit one particular child. The teacher said, "Our class right now is working on verbs and adverbs. Would you work with him so that he won't fall behind in his homework and fall behind the rest of the class?" She agreed. But it wasn't until she got outside his door that she realized this young boy was in the burn unit. No one prepared her for that. No one prepared her for finding this young boy who was horribly burned and in great pain. Her first instinct was to turn and run out the room. But she knew she couldn't do that. And so she said to the little boy, "I'm the teacher from the hospital. I'm here to teach you about verbs and adverbs." And she did her best to give him his lesson, though he was in such pain he hardly responded at all. She finished as quickly as she could, and she ran out the door. Well, the next morning when she came back, one of the nurses greeted her and said, "What did you do to that boy?" She began to bring out all of her worries about she'd done it wrong, or she'd not been there properly, or not been present for him. And all of her apologies started to pop out. But the nurse said, "No, you don't understand. You don't understand. We've been worried about him. But ever since you got here yesterday, his attitude has changed. He's fighting back. He's responding to treatment. It's as if he's decided to live." Much later, when the boy was asked about it, he said that he reached that simple conclusion that no one would send a real teacher to teach a dying boy. No one would send a real teacher to a dying child, would they? He asked. Would they? Our empty tombs of pain and suffering bring new hope. In every failure, in every struggle, is a word of hope. Somewhere in my office, and for those of you who have been in my office know what I'm talking about, somewhere in my office there's a National Geographic magazine that has a short article and a picture right next to it. Photographer Tomas Tomaszewski was in Mexico when he saw a little girl selling an armadillo for 30 pesos in a Mexican doorway. That's the picture that's next to the article. In the article, Tomas writes, "I knew if I didn't buy it, its only future was as soup." And so he took out 30 pesos and he bought the little creature. And he took him out to the jungle to set him free. And Tomas said, as it walked into the jungle, it looked back like it could not believe its luck. He called home to Warsaw that evening to his daughter Marina's 17th birthday. And he said to her, "Your present is one happy armadillo." As we leave the empty tomb and find the risen Christ, you and me should be one happy armadillo. So, my beloved armadillos, hope has won. Christ is risen. You are free. Amen. Amen. And now as we remember that great freedom,